We could only afford one apple a week. That was my dessert. But back then it was normal. It was like how everyone lived. My granddad was the one who pushed me all the time, like English, United States, you have to go there, you have to be there. I think it was 2010 when I started dating my husband, and he offered me to start a company and study abroad. I discovered YouTube as a platform. I was like, oh wow. Like this is the thing.
When I add up the total number of views on your 3 YouTube channels, it's almost 1.5 billion views. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rise, Life Stories of Accomplished Individuals. Today, I am very excited to have Marina Mogilko, also known as Silicon Valley Girl, here on the show today. Unfortunately, Marina couldn't join me in person, but we do have her here remotely. And hi, how's it going, Marina?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. So we met actually in person a few months ago, and it was the day right before Valeria and I left town. We went to Spain, and the way that meeting came about is I monitor Valeria's inbox, all the inbox to like Valeria's requests for whatever it is, and we got an email from you. And as soon as I saw Silicon Valley Girl, I jumped on it right away, and I said, Valeria, you have to meet with Marina. Because,
oh, cool. Thank you.
You know, because I've been following you for years, and you're awesome. I want to jump into some of your accolades, and I want to explain to the few people who haven't heard of you. I want to explain what it is you do, and who it is that you are, and then I want to jump into your story. So there's numerous accolades, but let's start with something that's glaringly obvious. Marina, you have approximately 11 million subscribers across 3 YouTube channels. And you have just shy of 1 million followers on Instagram. Also, when I went in and I did a little digging, and when I add up the total number of views on your 3 YouTube channels, it's almost 1.5 billion views. 1.5 billion with a B.
Yeah.
And there are very few. It's crazy, and there are very, very few creators who can say that they've got a total number of views on any given platform that's in the billions. So I mean, what can I say when I look at because it's really inspiring. It's really inspiring because I know how hard it is seeing Valeria do it, and knowing how much time, and you've been doing this, I believe, has it been 10 years?
I started at the end of 2014.
2000. Okay, so almost 10 years. Yeah. And I know what kind of a grind it is, and I follow you on these platforms, and I see the volume of content and the thoughtfulness you put into all of the content that you put out, and I know how much work it is. So I just really want to commend you on that. But I want to continue. So your videos are about business. You interview prominent creators, entrepreneurs. You vlog about your life and your family. You vlog about, or you talk about, your immigration path, and of course so much more. You're also the founder and CEO of, and I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly, linguatrip.com.
Yeah, LinguaTrip. I'm not the CEO. My husband is the CEO. I'm the COO, operations, marketing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But you and your husband found this together.
Oh yeah, we started together. It's just after we had our first baby, I decided that I will leave day to day to the team.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And over there, you offer 2,500 language courses worldwide.
Yeah, so that was initially a study abroad booking platform. We still have those courses, but now most of the revenue comes from online learning.
Online, but they're online courses. Is it mostly language, and it's all languages?
Mostly English. Yeah, mostly English for non-native speakers. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, and you've got 2 small kids.
Yeah.
Two little girls, right?
2 little girls. Yeah.
2 little girls, and how old are they?
3 and 2.
3 and 2. Wonderful. A year apart. That's very brave of you.
A year apart. Yeah, like a year and 6 months apart. Yeah.
Same as our two older boys. You've also recently started your career as a fashion influencer, and just now,
Yeah, you guys are
believe,
an inspiration. Oh my God.
well,
Yeah,
it's certainly
I'm
it's
trying.
not me. It's not me. It's
Well,
if anything, it's Valeria.
you and Valeria, because
No,
as a
thank
team, you guys are amazing. And I've been following Valeria for years now, and I always wanted to get into fashion world. But the problem is, I live in Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley has nothing to do with fashion. The only thing I was able to do was like digital fashion, because one of my friends started a startup called DressX, where they digitalize clothes with different designers. That was my first step into fashion, but then I really wanted to do more, because it's just another way to create as a creator, right? Through fashion, you show who you are. But yeah, guys, I'm looking up to you.
And you also, thank you. And you also just got back from Cannes, from the film festival, where you walked.
Oh my
I believe
God.
I believe I saw you walking a red carpet
2 times. Yeah, it was
2 times.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was one of the best events I've ever attended.
Wow. And did you get a lot of people coming up to you saying, oh my God, Marina?
Not really, by the way. I think in Europe, like most of my audience is here in Silicon Valley. This is what I feel like by people coming up to me and saying hi. Definitely Silicon Valley, definitely California, but not well. When I'm outside, I think Russia would be like one of the countries where a lot of people know me, because I have the whole channel that's just in Russian. But in general, in Europe, I feel like there is less audience. Again, just maybe because it was also this fashion crowd in Cannes. But I met a couple of followers, which was fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you are originally from St. Petersburg, Russia. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me your story. Let's go back to kind of your early life. I think, now that we've established your accomplishments, and I this is just what I found. I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff here that I haven't found, because you and I haven't talked at length yet. But let's go back to where this all started. So you were born in St. Petersburg, Russia. And would it be impolite to say the year that you were born? I know the year that you were born.
1990. Yeah, it's
1990.
everywhere.
Yeah, 1990. Yeah. So 1990, and you're actually the same age as Valeria. You're both, you're 33, and she's going to be 33 soon. So, you were born, it's interesting because I know Valeria's story very well. You were born also at the kind of very end of communism. When Russia, when it was all Soviet Union. Valeria was born in southern Russia, in a small town. You were born in St. Petersburg. So, your early life. And how old were you when you left?
25.
So you were 25. So by the way, your English is fantastic, considering you left when you were 25. But then again, that's what you do. That's part of what you do.
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah.
Of course. So, the amazing thing is that you grew up in this society that had just switched over. You were an infant, I believe. I believe it switched over in 92. So, it switched over. Like, how was it growing up in post-Soviet Union Russia in the first few years? How was that experience?
Yeah, as a kid, you don't really pay attention because you don't know anything else. I just remember, we lived in a room, in a shared apartment. So 3 of us in a room, and there were, I think, 2 other families. What I really remember clearly is that we lived there till I was 7 years old. Then we got like an apartment for ourselves. But I remember my parents wouldn't let me use the bathroom till I was 7 years old because it was so dirty. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to like
this was an outside bathroom. It was like a shared bathroom with the rest of the building.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And it was so dirty they wouldn't let me use it. So I used a potty until I was 7 years old. That's like the story of my life. But yeah, and I remember also like my parents and my grandparents telling me, Marina, you have to learn English. English is the key for you to, go abroad and see the world. And I used to watch a lot of American movies. Like, I think a lot of us post-Soviet kids share the same story, growing up with, limited food, limited everything, and then watching those American movies and creating and dreaming of American dream for ourselves as well.
So
And
literally limited food?
Yeah, well, again, because when the Soviet Union collapsed, both of my parents were in like government kind of related things, and their salary was like tiny, so we could only afford 1 apple a week. That was my dessert.
Oh,
and
my
then
God.
my mom would bring food from the canteen that was like leftover food. Yeah, like, but again, for me, it sounds crazy when I say this right now, especially taking the life that we have here in the US. But back then it was normal. It was like how everyone lived. So we never complained. And then again, because it was post-Soviet Russia, there was so much free stuff for kids as well. And you didn't feel like you were the poor kind of layer of the society. You were just like everyone else. We got free classes for kids to sing. We got free classes for kids to dance. And it was great.
So you don't have like a recollection of any kind of a class structure there. It wasn't like currently in the United States where there's obviously people of varying financial classes. Everything there was the same because, I mean, it was post-communism. So literally everybody was the same. So you had no memories of somebody who was, particularly wealthy or anything like that, do you?
I remember Oligarchs, and I remember stories when somebody got shot or something, and seeing like old Mercedeses in an almost empty town, right? Because back in the 90s, there were not too many cars. I remember that. And I was like, oh my God, yes, and people are super wealthy. But again, it wasn't like, I feel like in the US, there are a lot of wealthy people. Like you can't get a ticket to a business class because everything is fully booked. All of the top hotels are always fully booked, right?
Yeah.
Back then, it was like, maybe it was, I don't know how many, like 100 people in St. Petersburg that were oligarchs or close to oligarchs. And you knew they were there, but they were not part of your crowd.
So, look, you're obviously very ambitious. You've got a lot on your plate. You do a lot. You've done a lot. You've obviously progressed. What's kind of the origin of this ambition? Because, you were in a place, and if I have a fair understanding of culturally of your parents' background, they grew up where there's no more. That's it. This is what it is. So how did you develop that ambition, being raised by parents that are the product of that regime, and you're looking around and there's no classes. I mean, there's these oligarchs where that's just like a fantasy, right? But how did you know that, okay, like I want to succeed, I want to do more, I want to excel?
That's a great question. Because I feel like you just grow up with it. Again, watching, my granddad was the one who pushed me all the time, like English, United States, you have to go there, you have to be there. He would always tell me stories about, he would create imaginary stories of people who found like a diamond or something and got rich right away. I remember growing up listening to those stories, and he would always tell me, like, if you want to be rich and successful, learn English and go somewhere. And then I feel like also watching all of the American movies that we had access to, seeing that life that was only on television, and realizing that it's actually somebody else's life right now. That was a huge motivator.
Okay. So it's watching like Western movies.
Yeah, and also when I was 14, so I went to this school that was like a public school, but it had a program with one of the schools in the UK. That was the first time I went abroad was like when I was 12, when I went to Finland. But it was like a short trip in a car, in our friend's car. And I was amazed. I was like, oh my God, it's a completely different world. Oh, wow. But then I flew to England for 2 weeks because we had an exchange program that was sponsored by my school. So I went there for 2 weeks and I stayed with a British family. And the school that they had this exchange program with is like one of the top schools in England, Marlborough College. I think Kate Middleton went there. So it's like this beautiful boarding school where everybody has their own room and it looks like a castle. And I went there, and that was a cultural shock for me. When I came back to Russia, I cried for almost 2 weeks. I really wanted to go back because it was a completely different world. And I remember they gave us like a job so it was like a party, and we were serving snacks, and they paid us something like £10 an hour, which is I think $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And he's like, what, that kind of money per hour? Like, are you kidding me?
It's like it's like the streets are paid.
Yeah, it's like my whole budget for 1 month. And just touching that life for 2 weeks and being there, it like I came back home determined that I'm gonna move. I'm gonna experience that life abroad. And I've been dreaming about the UK all my like till I was 24, 23, and then I went to the US, and then I was like, okay.
Before
That's the
before
thing.
before we get there, because I wanna understand your immigration path. That's really important. But I wanna also understand kind of your education. So I know that culture, like I'll say our culture. In our culture, it's with immigrant families in the former Soviet Union, education was the goal. That was the key.
Yeah.
That was the way out. So, you're an entrepreneur, and when you studied in school, you were studying, and it was all about academics. Did your parents say to you, "Look, like, academics is the key"? Like, was entrepreneurship even on the table? How like there's a bit of a difference, right, between you and your parents, because they're like strictly academic and you're like, listen, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. So how did you
So actually, so my parents have completely different careers. My dad went to continue teaching, so he teaches right now. I think he teaches MBA in one of the universities, like remote teaching, because they both live in Thailand now. But he does remote teaching, so he teaches executives. And he was always telling me that being a professor abroad should be your top goal, because you have this amazing schedule when you don't have to work 9 to 6 every day. It's more or less relaxed. You do your research. And my mom, I think when I was 12, she started a small medical clinic with her friend who was already doing that for a while. So I knew what business was, and I saw her transition from her, traditional career into business, and I saw how exciting and also hectic it was. I was surprised that every week something happened, like something broke down, a doctor quit, and then she would hire someone, they wouldn't show up at work, like all of that stuff. But I also saw how we started to afford things, right? I was like, okay, entrepreneurship sounds exciting because it's unpredictable. And this is what I like as well. I like things that are unpredictable, because with a career, okay, this is the salary I'm getting this year. If I'm not fired, right, then it's going to grow by this in the next 5 years. And it doesn't excite me. I get excited when I don't know what I'm going to make next month. Maybe it's like, it could be 10x more than I'm making now. So that part of her job excited me a lot. And then I also remember, I think a lot of people did that back then. She imported clothes from Turkey and sold them in Russia to different stores. And I remember our rooms packed with different costumes for women of different colors. It was like, that was exciting, because I could see everything and I could experience. I went to that medical center myself and I could experience wow, my mom and her friend built this. Now this is exciting. I think this is where I got inspired to build a business. I was always afraid, seeing my mom struggle every single day with something breaking down where people quit. I was like, why can't you just build a business that works and you chill? Where is this part?
Wow. Whereas I'd like to see where that happens, when you can just build a business and chill. It's really interesting in this whole explanation that you just gave. This entire explanation. You talked in the beginning briefly about the struggle. You talked at the end briefly about the struggle, but 90% of that, of what you just said, was talking about the positive aspects of entrepreneurship and the reward of entrepreneurship, and not knowing what's going to come in a very positive way. So if I can speculate as to why you've been successful and why you continue to be successful, is you just have that natural outlook. From what I'm observing, you have that natural outlook to look at business, where all entrepreneurs know how hard it is, right? But for you, you're just naturally focused on the positive elements of it. So I would say that's probably one of the reasons why you are who you are and why you continue to succeed.
Yeah, looking at positive things, that what mom taught me all the time. You can look up at beautiful buildings and you can look down at all the trash on the pavement, and it's up to you to choose what you look at. And this is what forms your mentality.
Absolutely. How much would you credit your upbringing into specifically the role that your parents played and the influence that they had on you that kind of formed who you are as a person?
Oh, 90%, 95%. I don't know. My mom spent, again, I feel so jealous these days, because I know my mom, and again, in Russia, you can take 3 years off to spend with your kids when they're just born. And this is what she did. and I started working week 2, which and we
Wow.
have a nanny, right? And it's just a completely different approach to raising kids. She was always there for me. She would take me to school. She would pick me up. She would take me to classes. She will be there. She was there for me all the time. And I'm a little bit different now because I work and, we're used to getting help. But yeah, I owe my parents, I think, almost everything that I achieved.
So that's really important, right? Like I would say that's probably a common, I feel that the people that I talk with and the people that I interview on this podcast, I really feel it's a common denominator that the parents are heavily involved. Like they're heavily involved and they're very positive and they're really encouraging. So, that's obviously something that's that I keep.
That's the
keep
foundation,
seeing.
right?
It is. It absolutely is. And I think it translates into how we treat our children. And, for me, I unfortunately had a very different experience growing up family wise, but, it really taught me to be so mindful and thoughtful when I talk to my children, because I know that everything I'm saying to them is something that they're going to potentially is going to be a core memory and they're going to remember, and it's going to influence that how they are, long term.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So what was the kind of catalyst? So you wanted to leave since you were 12, since you took that trip, you've been wanting to leave. How was it that you didn't go to the UK? So you started talking before about how you ended up going to the US. So you're on the way to the UK. Did you already fill out the paperwork for the UK and then you kind of flipped at the end, or how did the US happen?
Yeah, it didn't get to the paperwork stage. When I realized how much it costs to go to a university there, of course, my parents could not afford it. And I went to St. Petersburg State University, great university. I also won like a scholarship to go to Germany for half a year to University of Dresden to study mathematics. That was amazing. Mm-hmm. They paid for everything. They gave me stipend, which was, again,
stipend?
Something like stipend. Do you say that? Scholarship? It's not like a scholarship. They paid me like 600 euros a month so I could support myself. And I paid like 200 euros rent, 80 euros insurance, and then the rest I would just, eat and travel on a bus through Europe. That was amazing. That was like one of the best memories.
And this is the college. Sorry, this is just so I can. This is the college you went to?
Yeah. So St. Petersburg State University was my main education, 5 years, and then half a year was like a study abroad part of that program.
Right. And so, and how were you working while you were in university? Were you able to not work and concentrate on academics?
I was able to not work because I lived with my parents and they fed me. I did some internships to realize I cannot work for a company. It was boring. I couldn't. I worked for 2 weeks and I ran away. It was a souvenir store in St. Petersburg. And then when I think it was 2010 when I started dating my husband, and he saw me. I went to the UK to that exchange program. I went to Germany, and he said, study abroad is this cool market because we knew a lot of people who did that, and he offered me to start a company and study abroad.
Oh wow! And how old were you? Sorry, how old were you at the time?
21.
So you're 21. So he suggested. And how long had you guys been dating when he made the suggestion?
Less than a year.
Okay, so less than a year. Your boyfriend at the time, was he your fiance already?
No, boyfriend. We got married 2017. Yeah.
Okay. So your boyfriend, who you didn't know was going to end up to be your husband, he says to you, let's start this business. So tell me, so you did this you were doing this in Russia before you left. So you started this business in Russia. Yeah,
we started in Russia. We had a friend, our mate from university. She wanted to go and study in the UK, and I knew the schools, and Dima was like, let's start a company to help her. Let's officially start it, because we were talking about starting something together. We both realized we don't want corporate jobs. He was like, that's our signal. We have the first client. So we messed up her whole trip because we didn't realize how everything worked, like how slow it's going to be to start a company, like legally, how slow it's going to be to do the wire transfer from Russia to Great Britain. But it was a great experience. She's a good friend. She's still a good friend. So she never complained. She was 8 weeks late for her trip, I think, but she was okay. She was okay with that, and we're super grateful. And then we got our second client, also our friend. So our first 3 clients were our friends, and then we started. experimenting with ads and started growing it.
But this wasn't automated. This wasn't like a website that automated this. This you were doing manually. You were making arrangements manually for them to study abroad.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did everything myself.
So you did everything yourself. So it was an agency essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And so how did that evolve? Like how long did you do that, and how big did that get? And this was while you're still in Russia. This was a few years before you left Russia.
Yeah, I was still in Russia. We started growing it. 2013 was a really good year for us when we realized we started. So we had an office in St. Petersburg. We started an office in Moscow, and we had this ambition to grow faster and faster. And in 2013, when we made quite good profit, we realized that offline growth is really slow. I hated travel. I hated going somewhere. And we decided, we started looking at the market, and we realized there was no online booking platform for those experiences. And again, we had no tech background. We knew nothing about startups. And yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. I apologize for interrupting. How did you bridge that gap? So when you say you have no tech background, I always find it fascinating. Like that moment, that was like, I feel that's almost like a turning point for you, because you have a business that's, it's essentially, it's brick and mortar. Like you're doing everything manually, right? And you have that business, and you know that you need to automate this business in order to achieve scale. And you just said, I have no tech background. That's what's amazing to me, because I feel that jump to automate your business by leveraging technology, it looks to me, from what you're doing now, that fueled your career, that one jump. So talk to me about how both you and Dima, how did you guys figure this out? How did you guys take your brick and mortar kind of workflow in your process, and how did you flip that into this? How did you build this tech?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember so the nature of the business, you have, we had over 100 schools that were our partners, and we really wanted to have a bigger portfolio. But the problem is they change their prices every year, and there are so many courses and so many combinations that you can have. Like, okay, I take a 4-week course, TOEFL prep, and I stay with with the host family, or I do an 8-week general English. Like there was so many combinations, so I tried to automate it with Excel, which was a lot of work. And then, every client would come in and would be like, oh, can you give me 3 options and also a couple of options for my kids? And I would be manually combinating that into an offer and creating a PDF for them. And that would take an hour, maybe 2, if I realized that the prices were not updated, and I would have to open the catalog for schools. And so it started with an Excel spreadsheet, and then we were like, okay, how can we build a website that automatically calculates everything? And they were like, okay, but we already book hotels online and we already book flights online. Can we just create the whole process virtually? Can we ask people to book online? And then back then, again, the idea was a little bit weird, because and there were hundreds of agencies in St. Petersburg and Moscow, and they would have nice offices, because again, this is a premium trip and you want this experience, offering coffee to people, showing them that you're legit, because the average cost of the trip is $2,000, maybe more. And we were like, but still, there are people like us who are willing to book online. And I think this is where it all started. And we had someone who helped us create a website, but he wasn't that advanced. So we started looking for someone. And again, that was my husband's job. He was reading all of the tech resources that were available in Russian back then, and there were not many. There were a couple websites. And he heard a story of a company called Ostrovok. They're doing really well these days, by the way. So they were two guys.
They're a developer?
Graduated from Stanford.
They're developers?
No, they're entrepreneurs. They started a clone of Booking.com, but in Russia, with a Russian entity, Russian everything. And they raised from Sequoia Capital. I don't know if you know Sequoia, but they're I would say top 3 investment firms in the world. They are early investors of Apple. And so Dima saw their story, Russian guys, yes, they graduated from Stanford, etc., but they were able to raise from these top guys with their tech product, which is basically bridging offline and online. And he was like, we can do the same. he didn't think about us not having Stanford's education, not knowing anyone in Silicon Valley. He was like, we can do the same. I was like, oh, I'm not sure about that, but let's try. And I think he started digging deeper, like what were the technology that the guys were using, and it was .NET technology. And he started to look for developers who knew that. And again, we had no idea what that meant. We just knew a couple of words, and he started his search.
Okay. And so after you automated it, I'm assuming you did it successfully. You were able to automate it.
Yeah,
okay.
we were. Yeah. It was,
okay.
Again, it was a lot of me in the background still.
Sure.
But for the client, it looked like everything was automated.
Okay. And so how did it scale after that? So after you kind of launched that layer of technology, albeit, with you in the background, how did it scale from there? Like, did it get to like a certain critical mass?
And we were still processing clients who existed already. So our database of clients who would book with us anyways. But we realized that in order to scale, we need to raise money, because the development of the website never stops. Like till this day, most of our expenses are IT people, because you always want to improve something. You always have things to automate. And so we started fundraising. We started emailing Mark Zuckerberg. This is how advanced we were.
Oh, stop! Sorry, I got to interrupt you. Sorry.
In the U.S.
You're in Russia. You're in St. Petersburg. You're in your early 20s. You just started automating this. Your services.
DMing Mark.
And you DM'd
LinkedIn.
Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah. I'm gonna guess that he didn't respond.
Yeah.
He did not, or he did.
Of course not. But you know who responded?
Tell me.
Darren Huston, the CEO of Priceline, responded.
Wow.
Like that was the only, we DM'd a lot of people. He responded, and we had 2 calls with him, and he was super helpful. He never ended up investing, but just having that connection and having his encouragement was so critical for us, because again, we're sitting in our St. Petersburg apartment just DMing people who we think are great and could help us, and Darren gets back to us.
Did you end up doing a raise?
That was really uplifting.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Did you end up doing a raise?
Yeah. So this is how we moved to the US.
Okay. Wait. See, this is all juicy stuff. You're going too fast, because this is all interesting stuff. So, okay, hold on a second. So you were working out of your home in St. Petersburg, automating this site. You finally find an investor. So tell me, because that's an incredible story in itself. Like, a lot of people who are located in America are reluctant to reach out to a lot of these venture capitalists and investors of any kind, or they won't go straight to VC. You guys went straight to VC. Like, it's not like you tried to do a friend and family, or maybe you did try to do a friend and family round, but it just sounds to me you just went straight for the people who actually make investments into companies versus friends and family. Okay, so tell me about.
Well, friends and family didn't have enough cash.
Right. That's what I'm.
No point in trying that.
That's what I'm getting at. So you went straight for the VCs, which that's a bold move. I mean, did you put a presentation deck together? Did you do all that? Like, and you sent it to them, and you had calls, and you presented on. Well, back then it was, what was it, Skype? Like, how did you do these presentations?
Skype. Yeah.
Skype.
Yeah.
And
Skype.
So
we didn't pitch.
Sorry, you had like a screen share. You had like a screen share, and like you presented your whole thing, and is that how you did it?
Yeah.
But that's, Marina. That's not.
Like, we were remote right from the start.
But that's super inspiring, because I think, like, I'm trying to you, it's funny because when you tell the story, you're like, yeah, what's the big deal? Like, I'm in St. Petersburg. I'm in my early 20s. I started this thing with my boyfriend. I needed to automate it. I saw that I needed to scale. So I just started reaching out to like the biggest VCs. I DM'd Mark Zuckerberg. Like, it's funny. And I want the listeners to understand that this stuff is just rolling off your tongue. Like, it's normal. Like, it's completely normal. And if more people had this attitude, that there really aren't any barriers. The only barriers are the ones that we as individuals put up ourselves. The fact that like I'm fascinated. I don't know what I'm more fascinated by, the fact that you did this or that you're so nonchalant about it. Like it's so not a big deal that, so okay, let's get past this and let me ask you. So you ended up doing a deal. Are you able to say how much money you raised sitting in St. Petersburg from these US investors?
Yeah, we raised $100,000 from 500 startups. So we realized that. So after talking to a lot of people, so we realized there was Y Combinator, Techstars, and 500 startups, top 3 accelerators. That would be the best starting point for a startup like us. So we applied to Y Combinator. We asked. So one of the people that was super helpful, his name was Patrick Schneider-Sikorsky. He was a first ever advisor. And the reason he connected with us, again, we reached out to him on LinkedIn. He was consulting one of the language learning companies in Russia at that time. And we flew to London to meet him with like several stops because we wanted to save us as much money as possible. And again, we made it sound like we're not flying to meet you. We're like, oh yeah, we have a meeting in London on Saturday. We could totally meet you Friday night. Like we made it sound like that when in reality we just flew to see him for like 6 hours to London. Yeah. And then, so we met with him and he was like, yeah, guys, Y Combinator, 500 startups, Techstars. And I'm going to introduce you to some guys who went through YC. And it was, again, early days, not too many founders, but he was able to introduce us to a couple of guys who helped us submit recommendations, because recommendations are everything when you apply to Y Combinator, because they look at how good you are at networking. And then with 500, there was a funny story. So I attended a lot of meetups for entrepreneurs in St. Petersburg because there were not too many. There was like maybe like one every month, but I would go everywhere and try to pitch Linguatrip to people. And most of investors, like Russian investors, would say, no, it's a dumb idea, no scale. But then there was this entrepreneur who came from the US, John Ramey, and he was just flying around the world talking to startups. So I pitched him Linguatrip and he said, my ex-girlfriend is entrepreneur in residence at 500, and I know they've already closed their batch, but I can ask her. I'm like, are you sure asking your ex-girlfriend is a good idea? He was like, yeah, we're on good terms with her. And so he helped us. He vetted our YC application, and he also introduced us to 500 startups. And like in two days later, I had my interview with 500 with Purnima. And she was like, yeah, the batch is closed, but your idea sounds cool, because I just came back from Costa Rica and I was learning Spanish, and the only way for me to book a school was to find it on Yelp or like TripAdvisor, so there was no booking platform. I feel like this idea is cool. And then next, I think it was on like Monday or Tuesday, we wake up and there's an email in my inbox. You got accepted to 500 startups. The deal is $100,000 for 7% of your company. You have to be in Mountain View in like 2 weeks because the batch starts. And also and the next email from Y Combinator, you are invited to our interview. We're going to pay for all your flights, all of your hotels. Please come. The interview is like tomorrow, something like that. It was like in 2 days.
So, okay, hold on. I need, hold on a second. I have some questions. I apologize for interrupting, but I have some questions because I don't want to miss this.
No.
You got an email saying you're getting $100,000 for 7% of your company from 500 startups. Then Y Combinator emailed you around the same time saying, we want to interview you to consider investing into your company. Okay. So
exactly.
And they said they'd pay for the trip. So then you hopped on the free flight, like the free trip to Y Combinator. Okay. But hold on a second. You need a visa to go from Russia to the United States. How did you get a visa in 2 days?
Because we were in study abroad business, and I mentioned I went to the US a couple of years before that.
Right.
We did a lot of fam trips. Like fam trip is when a school takes you on a free trip, so you could see all the universities and schools, take pictures for your website, and sell it better when you're back home. And so we both, Dimitri and I, we had our visas, and like a month before that, we knew we were kind of fundraising and trying to fundraise in the US, so we asked our CTO to just get a visa just in case. And back then it was 2015, it was easier for Russians. We still had an embassy in St. Petersburg, so you just basically make an appointment and you go and get it.
Okay.
It's not like these days when there is no embassy and you have to travel abroad and wait for months for your appointment. It was easy back then, so all of us had our visas, and it was the best, right? Because we had to leave in like hours.
What an adventure. Sorry, you said you had a CTO. How many staff did you have when you raised this 100K?
Yeah.
How many people were in the company?
So there were three of us as co-founders. Me, Dimitri, and our CTO joined as a co-founder. And we had two ladies, two girls working in the office processing all the bookings. So 5.
So it was lean. Are you able to say, or is it, if it's not a secret? If it is, then let me know. But I'm just really curious. Again, this was, what year was this in that you did this 100K? I'm really interested about this.
2015.
Investment. In 2015. So
2015.
Right. Are you able to say what you were doing in I don't know if it's like a rude question, but are you able to say what you were doing in revenue? I'm just curious what sparked their interest in, because if you think about it from their perspective, I mean, you guys are in Russia, you're far away, you're like, and it's just like, under what premise did they invest in the company? So how much scale, and there's 5 of you, so how much scale did you have?
We were making, I think, maybe like 20K a month in revenue.
Okay.
And the margins
Amazing.
are really low. It's a steady broad business. We get like 20% of that. But I think what really helped us was that part of our business is always international. All of the schools are in the UK, in the US, in Canada. So it's not like we're in this weird market that they don't understand. There is actually proof of revenue, right? I can ask the school, and they never do that. Like VCs in Silicon Valley, if it's 20K, then they're going to do their due diligence and ask for like proof of revenue. But it was like proof of concept.
So you're in California, you're with 500 startups, you go back to sort out your visa, then you come back, you're now living in California, you and Dimitri and the CTO, all 3 of you are back, you're there full time. And this is currently the company you have now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So did you do any more raises after that, or was that the only raise that you did?
No, we did raise from mostly angel investors. Because I think the strategical mistake that we made was deciding to become profitable versus scaling like crazy. So that was our mentality. If I did a startup now, I wouldn't do that. But because we decided, okay, we're going to be profitable, peace of mind, etc., we didn't raise Series A. We only raised a seed round and then an angel round, and then that's it. So now we're kind of, we're deciding what we're going to do next, and thinking about different ways. But now we're not going to make that mistake. Like it's all about scale.
So how many employees do you have?
So we have most of our team is remote. I feel like we have 60 people on the team, but not all of them are full-time. A lot of them are just contractors that we pay by hours. Some of them, they're like consulting us, but I think it's 60 people across the planet.
Okay. And how did Silicon Valley Girl happen in all of this? So you are at the helm of a startup. You're a funded startup. Was there any kind of a contradiction in saying, okay, like I have this startup, this is a super, like I have this huge responsibility that, that you're on, and you're doing this thing, and then you're saying, you know what, I'm going to become a YouTuber / influencer. How did that come about?
Yeah, so there's another part that I didn't tell you. When we were back in Russia, I still had this plan, like I really want to live abroad. And I found out that American universities give out scholarships to talented people from abroad. So I thought, I'll try. Let's see if it's going to happen. So first of all, I got an opportunity award from Education USA, which is like the US government. They paid for all of my exams. I took TOEFL and GMAT. And they also paid all of my application fees for me to apply to universities. And I applied to 5 universities. two of them actually accepted me with full ride scholarships, Johns Hopkins and University of Florida. And
Wow.
it all happened the same month when we got an offer from 500 NYC, when the universities send their offers. I was like, oh my God, like my life is changing. I can do this, I can do that. But we decided that we're going to do the startup just because it's real life experience. And
Right.
so when I did all of these applications, when I took my TOEFL and GMAT, I decided to document this journey because this is when I discovered YouTube as a platform where you can prepare for exams for free. And I was fascinated by all of the content and all of the creators that were there. And I thought, if they can do it, I could just record, the aftermath, what happens after the exam, how I did it, like how much I scored, etc. So I made this video about how I got 700 out of 800 on GMAT. And that was my
Yeah.
first video in Russian. And I was able to connect with people who were going through the same process because for me, it felt really lonely. None of my friends were doing that. And I was like, oh, wow. Like this is the thing. And then but even before that, we did some YouTube, like we paid some YouTubers to go to England to take our trips. And we saw how many clients that brought us. So I thought, I am not really sacrificing my time in our startup because I am building something that can bring a lot of traffic to our company. And this is what started happening. When we came to the US, I started documenting our journey. We bought this retired police interceptor off Craigslist for $2,700. Like that was the whole video that got 500,000 views for me. Back then, it was like, oh my God, like getting all the first hate comments, and getting a lot of traffic to our website because of course I was talking about LinguaTrip. So we decided that I'm going to spend some of my time focusing on that as well. And then I started, because my Russian channel started growing, I was like, okay, Russian channel, great, but I'm in the US. How about I
Yeah.
start a channel in English? I started Lingua Marina, which is mostly about, how to sound more American, all of the things that fascinate me about English language. So that channel started growing, but I realized my friends were not watching it because they were all native speakers in the US. Like, why would they watch it? So I started Silicon Valley Girl just to have more reason to hang out with them and like record videos about their amazing life and interview amazing people. And that was 2018. And then, when I got pregnant in 2019, I realized I can't do both. Like I can't do creator thing and also run a company because I was like almost like a proper CEO running everything, Zoom calls, etc.
Right.
No Zoom back then, by the way. I think it was Telegram,
Skype.
Skype or
Telegram.
Telegram. I don't remember what we used. Yeah, and then we decided that my husband is going to take over everything, hire more people, and I would just focus on my YouTube career and of course help the startup because we started all together and I'm behind a lot of products. And now I think these days I spend maybe 6-7 hours a day working, and most of that goes into being a creator and maybe like a couple hours into LinguaTrip.
So let me ask you something. And I'm gonna delve into like a kind of business slash personal. How is it working? I mean, how is it working with your husband? Because this is obviously something you and I have in common. We both work with our respective spouses, but how is it working for your husband and specifically, sorry, with your husband, how is it working with your husband and specifically when you said to him, you know what, I want to go off and be a creator and kind of get this top of the funnel traffic to start putting into, into our startup. How did he feel about that? Did he agree with you that this is a great source of traffic and then this is definitely the way that you should be going?
Yeah, and also because I was so emotional when running a company, he's so much better at, people relations than I am because I freak out all the time. Like somebody does something wrong, it's a tragedy
Right.
for me. Like they don't understand me, they don't hear what I'm saying. I'm done. Like I'm super emotional. He's a lot better at being the CEO and running everything. So yeah, he said perfectly fine, and he saw the opportunity there for me, so it was a mutual decision. And also when we started, it was a perfect combination, like working with my husband, doing everything together because we were together 24/7, same goals, super ambitious, doing the same thing. But what I realized now after COVID and after kids is that there is no stability in this, right? Because in 2019, when COVID started, we lost 100% of our revenue in a matter of days. Like in 2 days,
Wow.
we didn't know what would happen to us because travel stopped. And we had to figure out the whole thing. And I am glad I had my creator income because I knew, we're still going to be able to pay rent. We're still going to be able to do things
Right.
because I have my thing. And if we were both 100% in that company, I don't know what could have happened, right? Because we both depend on the same source of income. And I feel like these days we decided, working together was great, but for that period of time, now we really want to do something, even like for the dynamic in the relationship, because we want to educate each other and open up opportunities for each other, not like being the same thing all the time. I feel like this is for us. I feel like now we want to, because he's more interested in brain science now. He's running a company. He's doing his racing thing. I feel like now we came to.
Sorry, he's now starting. Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. He's now starting another company?
No, he's just exploring, because the idea that he has is needs a lot of capital, and he's just exploring, like meeting a lot of Stanford professors, etc. So he's exploring other ideas, but of course the goal is to sell LinguaTrip or create a merge with another company. But we're figuring it out because we're building.
How does Dimitri feel, I guess, on a personal note? Like, how does he feel about this whole creator thing? Because you have to. I'll give you some context to my question. So with Valeria and I, when Valeria started creating content and I jumped in, I kind of knew what I was getting in for. Like, I understood that there's going to be our lives will have a large public component to it. But I kind of come from marketing. Like, I've been in some form of internet marketing, in the last 25 years. And for me, because I come from that world, I understood, and because I actually had a business before working with celebrities. We had an office in LA, and we worked with celebrities. That's a whole other story. But so I knew what we were getting into, and I knew that was going to happen. But with you guys, it's different because you guys came from like startup life, and where you're private, you have a company, you grind it out, you're in the office for long hours, and you don't have this lens on you. I was so familiar with it, and for Valeria, she never knew any other business before then, because before she became a creator, she was a model. So she's already used to that being in the public eye. So I guess, how did you make that transition, and how did your husband manage that transition where now it's like your lives are private and all of a sudden his wife's on, she's getting billions of views, and I see him in the content as well. He's a great sport for participating too. And the kids are in it now. So we didn't have to make that transition because Valeria was always like in front of a camera since she was like a young teenager, but you weren't. You got in front of the camera already in your mid to late 20s. No?
Yeah.
No, mid 20s.
24.
So
yeah.
how did you do that? How did you make that transition?
You never think about it as a transition. You just do what you want to do. And he was always so supportive. And I feel like, because again, when we discuss what our dreams are, sometimes he also mentions like, being in a movie or something like that. We always dream about things. And I think part of him also wants this publicity, also wants this attention. So he's fine with me that I'm taking over this part of our lives, and he's going to take over the entrepreneurial part of our lives.
Okay. Let me ask you something. On the creator, so again, you've got the startup, you on the one side, your husband is CEO, you're COO, which is still an operational role, and you're creating content. What I want to know is, I have two questions. How the hell do you create so much content? Again, I know this business quite intimately, and I see the hours that Valeria works, and I see the amount of content she puts out, and it's a lot of hours. And she's got a large team that's doing pre-production, post-production. How many people are on your creator team? How many people are supporting you as a creator?
Yeah, I think around 10 people.
Okay. So that makes it a little more palatable.
Yeah,
because
of course.
if you were about to tell me that it's like you and one assistant,
No.
I was gonna march into Valeria's office and say, Valeria, we need to talk. But no, that's not the case. Okay.
No, absolutely not. I have editors. I have people who actually post content for me on YouTube.
Right.
I have people, I just hired a social media manager who's going to help me with stories, because after the festival, Cannes Film Festival, I realized sometimes I can't even post stories because I don't have time, because we have all the meetings and like makeup, hair,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then you do the
Sure.
event and then you're done for the day. You don't have any energy left. So yeah, it's all about, and like just yesterday we're in LA and I was talking to my husband how grateful I am for the team, because you don't realize it, but there are so many processes happening on the back end, because my manager is on vacation now, and I'm like, and she left me a list of things that need to be done. I'm like, oh my God, like there's so many
Yeah.
things, and they are helping me with all of that. So yeah, team is 80% of work.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And that's a whole other skill set, right? Because,
Yeah.
and I think that one of the reasons, and I kind of again say this from my own experiences, is one of the reasons I feel that you continue to be that you had initial traction and you continue to be successful as a creator is because you treated this creator business like a business.
Yeah.
Similar to us, right? You
Mhm.
hired a team, you put in a proper management structure, you put in workflows, whereas a lot of creators, they don't do that. So, to get to your scale. But even then, how do you explain how do you explain the number of views you're getting on your videos, especially like in short form? Like I can see that and I guess we're kind of geeking out right now and we're getting really technical on the social media side and on like, on the YouTube side, and that's something that you and I have in common. But I mean, you really doubled down on shorts. You saw that opportunity, so you really doubled down. We're doubling down on it now
Mhm.
with Valeria, um, but you started, I think, a lot earlier, and your shorts are it's getting a ton of traction. So would you say a lot of your growth came in the last? I'm guessing you've been doing it for about a year and a half, 2 years since they actually formalized it, where they actually merged it so you didn't have to create a separate sorts channel because they didn't merge it correctly, and now they formatted it all correctly. So did you see a ton of growth in the last kind of year since you started going hard on shorts?
Absolutely. Well, not most of my growth, but a lot of my growth happened in 2022, 2023, because I mean, I wanted to skip on this trend. When shorts started, I was like, okay, again, another format. Like, I'm tired.
Another.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I have to do
Yeah, yeah.
stories. I have to do videos. I have to do long videos. Now I have to do shorts. Like, how much content do I have to produce? So at first we're like, okay, let's just, because I knew there was this trend. And of course, you listen to Gary Vee, who's like, you have to be on TikTok, you have to do this. And you're like, okay, if Gary says that. So I asked my team to just create clips for my long videos. They were performing okay, but not too well. And then I was like, okay, let me just try and do something different, because I always feel like growth happens when you do something completely out of this world, completely out of your
Yeah.
world. So I thought, let's make a mini vlog, because I thought I heard someone was doing like a mini vlog of their day. I was like, okay, what's
Yeah.
the trigger topic? Like, where are the triggers? Okay, let's make a video on how much it costs to have a baby in California. And I had all the footage from having my second baby, so I just did a voiceover, like, hey, I'm gonna tell you how much it costs. And that video, and I uploaded it on TikTok. And then I check in a few hours and I see 1 million. And I thought it was a mistake because I never got that many views that fast. I was like, well, something is wrong. Maybe they're like tweaking the algorithm. And then in 2 days,
Right.
it was 3 million. And then in a week, it was 13 million. And then suddenly there
Hmm.
is an article in BuzzFeed. Suddenly there is an article somewhere else. Like, and it's just, I was like, okay, I found a new format. And I uploaded it on YouTube, and it did really well on YouTube. I think 30 million views. And that was like April 2022, April and May. I started doing more of those mini vlogs. I really doubled down because I saw like this is the next level. This is a new opportunity, like millions of views. I was getting like 100 million views every month. I was like, okay, we're going to double down. So I doubled down. It was crazy. Like, first of all, reading all the comments. And again, my husband is my therapy. I was like asking him, what should I do? They're calling me a bragger who just spends her money left and right. Like, because I did a video how much it costs to wash a Tesla in California, which is like $50. People were like, are you
Yeah.
crazy? Can you just wash your car? But you like, all of the comments, like
Yeah.
this was the first time I was getting so much attention, and press as well. And that was a little bit overwhelming. So I kind of slowed down, but I still realized that's the trend. So now I've slowed down with my shorts. I'm doing maybe like a short a week.
But
Uh,
hold on a sec. Hold on. Sorry, I have to interrupt you. I apologize. Um,
Absolutely.
hold on. So you're making it sound like the reason you've been succeeding in short form in the last year is because you hopped on the short trend early enough to catch the wave.
Mm-hmm.
But I would argue that very many people at the same time did what you did to try to catch the wave, and they weren't getting the type of numbers that you're talking about. So then my question to you is, how is it that you're,
Two
how is it,
things.
how do you attribute? Yeah.
Yeah, so first of all, timing was perfect. That's like it's very crucial because when the social network pushes something and you're one of the first, like you're getting this unfair advantage. You can produce mediocre content and still get away with it. But the second thing, I wasn't producing mediocre content. I was producing it at first and I was not getting the views that I was hoping to get. But then I started those wild experiments like with topics I never covered before in my vlogs. And that what gave me this is when I was able to find the right format of these videos. I realized this is how the storytelling works. This is how I should start a video. And then it also gave me an advantage because I did vlogs with voiceovers. We could translate them using AI
Yeah.
and other companies into like Spanish and German. Yeah, so two factors, right? Of course, you put a lot of work into it. Of course, you put a lot of thinking into it. I had my assistant think about 100 ideas, that I could film, and we would only select like three top ideas.
Yeah.
Like what Americans eat for breakfast, or like how much it costs to fill your whole tank with gas when the gas prices were crazy, right? It's also because short form allows you to react really fast. So when something happens, you're like, oh, there are no eggs in Safeway. Let's go and make a video, like that type of stuff. It allows you to do that. So I realized that because I'm in the US and I like my DNA is comparing countries to each other because I've traveled so much and I've seen the best things all over the world. And genuinely, one of my goals is to make the US the best country in the world. So we need gas stations from France. We need a Russian manicure places in the US. Like we need all the best things. And I'm glad this is actually happening because a lot of people are moving. But like my goal is to highlight what is different here and how it's different from the rest of the world. So maybe some entrepreneurs who watch my content like, oh, wow, let me start a gas station that has fresh baguettes and amazing coffee and the best food in the world so we can have all the customers. Like that's the main goal behind all of these videos, like showcase what's exciting about the US. And again, this is me. I don't have to make up content. I just see it everywhere just because I compare everything to everything all the time.
How do you organize yourself? Because again, the volume of content you're putting out in short form, long form. You're the COO still of your company. You have two little girls too. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I won't lie. Like we struggle with it. There's myself and Valeria. I'm even embarrassed to say how many nannies we have, but like we struggle. Like Valeria works a lot. I put a lot of time in as well. And how do you do it? Like because the way you talk about it versus the way that I think about it when I think about Valeria's schedule and my schedule, to me it's like almost like it's a source of stress knowing how much we have to get done at any given time. But the way you talk about it is just like hey, everything's cool, like I'm getting all this done. So how do you do it? Because I want the listeners to understand, like, you making it sound easy, but it's not. Like how do you balance all this?
Well, actually, I started taking it easier starting this year because last year I had a schedule. Like forced myself even to make 3 long videos, one for each channel every week, and at least 3 shorts for each channel. And then I think in November and December 1st, I saw short views going down because there is more competition now. By the way, I hang out with a person from YouTube yesterday. 80% of views are now shorts on YouTube, but
Yeah.
the long form viewership did not decline. So it's still the same for long videos. It's just, this chunk of views are now for shorts on the platform as well. So the platform is doing better than ever, which is great. And I'm super
Yeah.
happy for them. But in November, first of all, I saw the viewership going down. So the videos did not explode like they used to. So I was like, okay, I think we're past that trend when everything was exploding. Now it's just a matter of creating good content. And also I sat down with myself and I started thinking about what's next. Getting more views is predictable, easy. I know the algorithm. Like, yes, I want 10 million followers on Lingua Marina. I know how to do it. It's the matter of time, and it's the matter of the amount of videos that I'm going to produce. Like, this is not exciting. And just like I saw Valeria traveling to different locations with different brands, meeting those amazing people. I was like, this
Right.
is what I'm missing in my life. This is what I'm lacking. I want more of this. I don't want more studio time getting more views, because there is enough of following already. I can already approach top brands saying like, hey, I have 16 million followers
Absolutely.
across my social media platforms. I don't have to do this work anymore if I'm no longer that excited. And also, our nanny had to leave. That was another huge factor. So I realized that there will be several months when we're going to be on our own with Dimitri and the kids. And these were like, oh my God. Like, I don't know if you've ever had this time with your kids, just you and your
Sure.
kids.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
And Dimitri was and we were kind of positive about it. We're like, oh, this is how our parents did it. It's just us and our kids. But in reality, he had his races. So he left for several days, in weeks in a row. And
Sorry.
I had,
Did you say races? Race.
yeah, he's
See
a Formula 4 race driver.
what?
He's doing a US Formula 4 championship. So he has races every 3 weeks. So he leaves for like
Okay.
4 days, and he comes completely exhausted. And so comes back home. And so I had to stay with the kids, and my kids are 3 and 2, right? They can't fall asleep on their own. I have to be with them. They have different sleep schedules. They wake up in the night, and I was so exhausted at the end of that period. So now we have a nanny who lives with us. But when it started, when I realized how stressful it is, I told myself, Marina, you're going to produce videos when you have time and when you have energy for it. So these days, I do maybe like 3 shorts a week for all the channels, maybe like a couple long videos, but only if I have time and I feel
But
the
that's a
energy.
lot. If that's you slowing down, like that's still quite a bit.
But it's
Most
it's
full-time.
super. Yeah, but my long videos, they're for Lingua Marina, for example. I already have a script. So I just read off the script, I add some things, and then my team checks it, my team publishes. With a vlog, I just go around and film it. So it's actually easier than it may sound. Like, it takes me an hour to make a video.
Right, right. I feel like you don't have this mental block when it comes to making content, because I believe that a lot of creators, they so overthink the process, and they so overthink just getting the footage and what they're going to say and how they're going to be dressed and everything. And it just sounds to me like you don't have these blockers. You're always on. Like, you can just grab your camera and start filming at any point in time.
has it has its downsides. This is all that, like, most of the hate I'm getting for my cons, like, Marina, you didn't double check. Why did you say this? You have to double check your facts, blah blah blah. Sometimes I just speak my heart out, and people are like, come
Yeah.
on, like, this is not true. And yeah,
But
like,
you've been
but I'm not a journalist, right?
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes.
You've been doing this. You've been doing this long enough that the whole hater thing. I'm assuming that that's it. You don't care anymore. Like, we struggled in the beginning, when Valeria started getting scale, but now it's just like whatever. Like, let them talk. We don't care. I'm assuming you don't care either.
Yeah. I started thinking about it, like, I give them the platform to speak out and let them use my platform. But I don't think I'm like Logan Paul kind of,
No.
level of self-awareness. I feel like if I get like the cancel culture thing on me, I would still be stressed out. But with like 10% hate that I'm getting online, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, it's not.
it's
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 not a
it's
big
a
deal. Okay,
level. Mhm.
so you started talking about, after everything, like, now we've gotten to this point. There's a lot, right? I mean, there's a lot that you've done, like, in summary, to this point, and now you've decided that the numbers aren't, you just touched on it, the numbers aren't as important to you. And I think where you're kind of alluding to is that on the quantitative side, you're fairly satisfied. You still want to grow, but that's not what's driving the needle of your happiness. Whereas now it's on the qualitative side, and hence the transition into being a fashion influencer. And by the way, I have to say that, when you came to create that content with Valeria, you were super fashionable, and you're welcome. And it's like, okay, well, if somebody were to meet you that first time like that, and you had a camera in your hand, they would look at you and say she's a fashion influencer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't, yeah, but
Mhm.
you're welcome. They wouldn't be like, oh my God, she's a startup. She did startups. She's a Silicon Valley girl. They wouldn't. They wouldn't even dream that this is the case. So it seems to me like you're very versatile. And from what I'm hearing, you're one of these people who you're like a savant. Like anything you do, you're good at it. Valeria is the same way. Like, you know who else is the same way? You know who else is the same way as you? Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber's the same as you. I'll tell you, I have a friend of mine who spent some time with him, and he said Justin Bieber, he's just this naturally talented guy. And, when they hung out, anything that Justin would do, he would just be really good at. So they were hanging out and they started playing pool, and Justin Bieber picked up a pool cue. He'd never played pool before, and they said, "Oh, I'll try it." And he tried it, and he was he was perfect right away. So I feel that that's like based on the kind of diversity of the things that you've kind of endeavored to do and the things that you've accomplished and continue to accomplish. You're one of these people who's good at everything. But do you feel that, because again, like I really want to come back to bringing value to the listeners. Do you feel that this is a natural quality, innate quality that you have? Or do you have to work on stuff? Like, do you pick things up right away? Because like being a fashion influencer, that's very different than the quantitative businesses that you've been involved in before, right? This is very qualitative. This takes like it's an eye, it's an artistic expression. So do you feel like is it just easy for you to pick up all these things, or do you work really hard at it? Like, did you have to sit
Yeah,
for
of
hours to
course.
understand fashion?
No, of course. And I don't think of myself as like a fashion influencer per se, because I would never acquire the taste that Valeria has, for example. She styles herself. I could style myself, but it would look weird at times. I work with a stylist. I have a stylist. She helps me a lot. Like, I wouldn't say this is something that comes naturally. Like, I have a person who tells me, nah, Marina, no, 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 not that. We're going to do this. Sometimes I do stuff like this. Okay. But that's easy.
Yeah, no.
Um,
But listen,
like,
but to be fair, like Valeria does have a stylist for special occasions
But
and
we're
stuff.
at carpets, right? But she does
Yeah,
like her day to day. Like, I
sure.
can't do day to day fashion blogging just because I don't have that taste and I understand it. Like, I don't have that ability. Yes, I can copy what my stylist says. I can kind of acquire her taste, but this is not that comes something that comes naturally. You should have seen me 2 years ago. Like, if you watch my interview, I don't know, with Justin Khan, I'm sitting there in my huge Lululemon t-shirt back from my pregnancy times, and I'm not wearing any makeup. Like, this is what I would do if I didn't have a stylist.
That's fair. That's fair. So look, you're 33 years old. Okay. You're only getting started, yet you've already had multiple careers. The amount of stuff that you've done, it almost feels like you should be retiring, but clearly you're not going to. You're only 33. What's next for you? I mean, what can we expect to see? Where all, your husband's a race car driver. I mean, you guys don't stop. Like, do you ever look from the side and say to yourself, where are we? What's going on? Like, I was just a kid in
Yeah.
Russia yesterday, and now I'm all of these things, and my husband is all of these things, and we live in California, and I'm like internationally known, millions of followers, billions of views. At any point in time, do you just stop and say, what is going on here? Like, is it ever surreal to you what's
Absolutely.
going on in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, we were just talking about that yesterday. We were at a party, Andreessen Horowitz party, which is like a top VC firm in LA.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like there were maybe like 50 people, and I knew maybe like 20 of those people. And I saw, and my friends are now, they work at YouTube, like TikTok, Instagram, like all of the amazing creators. And we were flying back to the Bay Area, and we were like sitting on the airplane. And I would, like, remember in 2015, we would go to every party that they would invite us to. And they were like really small parties with, just random people, because we were never invited to like top events. And
Yeah.
now, like, we only dreamed about Andreessen Horowitz parties back then. And now we just came there and we know almost everyone. That's like, it's crazy. Yeah.
It's incredible, Marina. I have a question to you because I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to start kind of winding it down. But I do have a question for you, and I think that what young people struggle with the most is they struggle with how to start. The question that I get asked, I get people DM me a lot, and people that I meet kind of in real life, they're always asking me, how do you start? How do you start? How do you get A, the motivation, B, the finances, C, the idea. How do you execute? How do you learn how to do all these things? There are so many things that you need to do when you start. Like, it just seems so overwhelming for young people. What would be your advice to the people listening? How do you start when you're young?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I feel like the answer would be stop overthinking. Because when I remember like starting a business back in Russia, my parents would tell me, well, my dad would tell me, you're going to get arrested because, in Russia, if you go too big, the government gets involved, etc. Like you're going to get arrested, blah, blah, blah. Don't start a business. If I were to start a business now, I would never start a company that we started back then because now I realize, it's a small market. It's not really growing. Like, okay, it's
Yeah.
very operational. There's so many processes involved. But I didn't think about that back then. And guess what? Like, we built a company. It's not a billion-dollar company. It's not the hugest company in the world, but it got us where it got us. And I think it's great, right? Because sometimes we overthink, okay, but this person told we need to start something in AI, or this person told me I should dance on TikTok videos and I feel like making a long video about personal finance. Like, go ahead and do it. Stop overthinking. I feel like people have so many barriers in their mind because they're looking up to someone. They want to be like someone and they think they need to follow their steps, which sometimes really works, but it doesn't work when you have no experience, haven't done anything. It just blocks you from actually taking action. And when you take action, you make your mistakes, you realize you made a lot of mistakes, but you did something and you now have this experience.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Marina. I have one request. My request. Well, my question. I have one last question. When are you and Dimitri going to be in Miami?
I don't know when you tell us, guys. When you invite us, we're going to be there.
You know what? Well, we're going to let you know. Now we're going into the summer, and it's hotter here than you
Uh,
probably
We
you
were
care to
there in
experience.
July last year. I loved it. I
Okay,
I
okay.
would
So
live in
come.
Miami. I love
Okay, so that's interesting because I remember seeing one of your videos where I think you were shopping for a place down here.
Yeah, so I really want to invest in a property somewhere, but because it's my first property, I can't really make a decision. I'm like, okay, USA, so many taxes and like HOA fees. Why not France? Why not Dubai? Because I'm so international, right? And it's so hard for
Mhm.
me to make this decision. So I really gave up on that.
Well, if you ever, I mean, we came down here 2 years ago for a short trip and just didn't leave. And I had a crash course in Miami real estate. So if you ever want my advice for what it's worth, I'll be happy to give it to you. But
Thank
let's
you.
make plans. Let's have you and Dimitri in Miami. Let's the four of us hang out. Marina, thank you so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate this. And I want to say that I really appreciate the fact that this is a brand new podcast for me. I literally like when you agreed to do this, it wasn't even up yet. Now it's up with one episode, and that one is with Valeria. So
Congratulations.
thank you. And I feel that it's because you're also an entrepreneur and you've been there before. You're being very kind to me by being my guest. So thank you,
Thank
and
you.
we'll wrap it up and let's see if there'll be a part two one day.
Yeah, I wanted to show you, I'm gonna go on a hike right now, and on my playlist, I have this video with Valeria.
Oh yeah,
Somebody,
for Money Buys Happiness.
yeah, somebody just sent it to me and said like, "Hey, you need to copy her strategy, reaching out to brands," because she's talking about like reaching out through Rocket, whatever. I need to explore that. So this is what I'm gonna listen to.
Well, anytime you need advice when it comes to brands, feel free to let me
Thank
know.
you.